leave your ego at the door. We are here to learn from one another. It doesn't matter whether you think you're a white belt or a black belt. We all have stuff to learn.
It seems rational, but what's rational isn't always right.
The biggest limiting factor in our business is us, right?
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back for another episode of the Mission Control Podcast. I believe this is episode 24. I'm your host, Mike Stearns with Ascend Digital Agency. This episode is proudly sponsored by the guys over at Roofer. If you need instant roof measurements and clean and pristine proposals, hit up the team at Roofer. Dylan Mccabe, what's up, homie?
Hey, thanks for having me on, man.
Yeah, man. Thanks for coming. It was, dude, so you're doing something really interesting in the space. Let's dive right into that. Talk about your GPO, Limitless. What is it? Go ahead. Stage is yours.
Yep. Great. So I came into roofing from the outside a couple of years ago, and I was in the world of healthcare. And in healthcare, they have these big buying groups. And I'm not talking for hospitals. I'm talking about just like independent physicians, guys that are kind of entrepreneurial. They want to have their own practice. Well, there's these buying groups where 500, 1,000, 2,000 of these independent doctors would come together and they would go to their supplier. Just like in roofing, there's really three major suppliers in healthcare. Mm-hmm. They would go to their supplier and they would say, hey, there's 1,000 of us. We represent 500 million in spending every year. If we work with you and not your competitor, what kind of deal can we get? And they would just create leverage that way. And so, right. And the other thing they would do that doctors are really good at is they would come together maybe like once a year for a conference or a whatever, and they would just share best practices because doctors are very aware that they don't really know how to run a business. And so they don't see themselves as competitors. They would come to these events and they would just share best practices and share what's working, what's not working. And doctors are just really good about that. Whereas in roofing, a lot of guys say, I don't want to tell my competitor what I'm doing that's working. Then he's just going to go do it,
Right. That makes a lot of sense. So we're taking the advantage of pooling these resources for leverage. It's more of it's like wholesale on steroids, right? It's kind of... You're creating a system where because of the purchasing power of all, collectively, you have that inherent leverage, right?
Yes, you're creating leverage. So our group, Limitless does two things. We want to help our members grow together and learn from one another in monthly masterminds and trainings and stuff like that. And not just grow your business, but grow personally. I mean, let's face it, the biggest limiting factor in our business is us, right? What I brought to the office today, my emotions, my feelings, my perspective, I'm one of those guys that's pretty open about how I feel, how I think. It's probably because I was raised with a single mom and sisters and stuff, really, really comfortable with the whole feelings thing, right? Sure. But statistics show that that's like over half of our performance is just the way we think and feel, right? So we want to help our members grow personally as leaders and professionally. And then the second part is we want to put more money in their pocket through buying power. And that's not just on the supply side. That's with everything from healthcare to general liability insurance to lead generation, you name it. Pretty much everything that take the top 15 things you spend money on as a roofing owner. There's a way with our group, and I'm sure others will come out over the next few years, to just come together. We're stronger together. So when I was in healthcare, there's hundreds of these groups. When I got into roofing, I started asking, where are the buying groups in roofing? And everybody I talked to was like, what are you talking about?
Aha, there's an opportunity, right?
Yeah. I went to my business partner, Miller. We had started CEO groups, which we used to call them peer advisory groups. That's another phrase that's just not used in roofing. But in the more white collar world, it's very prevalent. And there's a company called Vistage Worldwide. They've got like 25,000 members in their peer advisory groups. All it is a monthly mastermind. Sure. And so we started that, and we started asking some of our members. We're meeting twice a month. We're learning best practices. We're going through the book Traction, learning all this great stuff and doing a mastermind. And we start asking our members, have you ever been a part of a group like this that's just designed for equipping and buying power to save you a lot of money every year on the expensive things you pay for? And everybody said, no, we've never been a part of that. Okay, well, would you like to be a part of one if we started one? And everybody said, heck yeah. And so we thought, okay, we're on to something here.
Yeah, that's smart. It makes a lot of sense, and I can see why people obviously would want to be a part of it. It seems like, it's one of those situations where everybody wins. Let me ask you this. You stated that there's really two benefits to it, right? So if we had to create a primary and secondary as far as importance, maybe for you, what is the primary benefit of the GPO? Is it the personal growth aspect of it, or is it the saving of money side of it?
I think the primary benefit is just the growth, because you're in a community. You're growing your business with a community of owners. I mean, nobody climbs Mount Everest alone. I just finished that book a few months ago, Into Thin Air, about the disaster in the 90s of the team that climbed Everest, and the climber that was a reporter wrote the story. And so many people died on that mountain, and it's because they started off as a team, but then they got separated and they started breaking into smaller groups of 2 and 3. And the main climber wanted to take people to the summit and make other people wait. And then he would come back down and get them and bring them to the summit. And it was just a train wreck, and a huge storm hit the mountain. Multiple people died. It was just a disaster. But it's because they were essentially climbing alone. And a lot of roofing owners are doing that. They're trying to, they've got their summit that they want to attain, whether it's 10 million a year in revenue or whatever it is. They have this idea of success, but they're climbing alone. They've never grown a company before. Most roofing owners don't have an MBA degree. Most roofing owners started as a sales guy and then transitioned into ownership. And there's just a huge chasm between being an effective salesperson and an effective owner and CEO of a company.
Yeah, you're not wrong. I couldn't agree more with you. Give me a second, because I just want to think for a second. So, what has been the biggest challenge? You guys are still in the infancy stage, right? I think you're right around 50 members.
Yes, we're one year in.
Okay. Has there been some obstacles in your growth that you didn't potentially see, or have there been challenges that have presented themselves where that you've had to work through in that first year? Because I think for a lot of businesses, like you said, even if you have an MBA, there's shit that pops up and you're like, wow, what the fuck? I didn't see this coming, right?
Yeah, I thought we would start this thing and we would have like 300 members in the first month. I mean, I just thought the floodgates were going to open. This is a no-brainer. It's so simple. You just come together, you help each other grow, you save tens of thousands of dollars a year just by being a part of the group and changing nothing in your business, right? Mm-hmm. And it was just crickets at first. People were like, what, a GPO? What's a GPO? It's a group purchasing organization. And it just those challenges. So we don't even call it a GPO anymore. We've been calling it a buying group for the past 6 months or so. And I'm even tempted to just start calling it the Limitless Roofing Group and let people ask, well, what is it? What's the Limitless Roofing Group? Because, if you say we're a buying group, then that kind of pigeonholes you into just the buying part. Well, no, there's much more. And so that was the challenge. And we thought, I really like communicating. I like public speaking. I like teaching. I like connecting with people. I'm really not a good marketer. I mean, Miller and I have learned that this year. Like we kind of suck at marketing. And so we just hired a chief marketing officer. He's the guy doing fractional CMO work. And we brought him on board, and he was not cheap. But it's just, we've come to the realization, like the whole Dan Sullivan thing, who, not how. It's really more important who you bring on instead of you trying to figure out how to do it. We've been trying to figure out how to do the marketing and storytelling piece, and because we're just bad at it. And so I'm relieved to get some help.
Yeah, dude, congratulations. And I mean, that also plays into the traction thing, right? Right people in the right seats,
Yeah.
Yeah, good for you.
See, I didn't know a Michael Stearns at the time, and I should have called you up and been like, bro, we need some help here. Like, we really suck at this.
That's funny. That's all right. There's plenty of things I suck at. It's all good. It's like you learn more and more every day, and it's like the things that you learn are helpful, but it's almost like you're gonna not know a lot more than you do know, right? So the amount of things that I figure out that I'm not good at and that, I need to either avoid or have somebody else do, it's real and it's persistent and it's all good. There's opportunities there. So I find that in my experience in speaking with people, when people hear the word mastermind, there's usually like a negative connotation with it, right? I don't think that, for people that haven't been a part of a mastermind, I almost feel like they interpret it as like gimmicky, or there's like not the value that someone who's in a mastermind or done a mastermind might see in it. Why do you think that is? Is that your experience for people that haven't done a mastermind?
Yeah, that's it. That's an interesting question. I've only been a part of a couple in my whole life. And so that's my frame of reference. I don't know what other people have experienced. I've heard people say I was part of this mastermind. It was a waste of time. And, I've had some of our members. I had one of our members, Crystal Watterson with Greater American Roofing. She said, this is the best mastermind I've ever been a part of. And I've been a part of several. And I'm thinking, well, what do they do? But ours are modeled after a guy that's a business mentor of mine. I just went to his Christmas party yesterday. Jim Beckett, former owner of Beckett Interests or Beckett Guide. It's the number one publisher of sports card magazine.
I bought
and sports
plenty of Beckett books in my day.
Yeah, so he's the number one publisher in the world for many, many, many years. So you can just imagine what happens when you're the source for trading card insights, and not just baseball and basketball. It snowballed into everything from baseball to Pokemon. And so he had a very healthy exit from that company that he started as a hobby. He was a PhD professor of statistics at Southern Methodist University. He started that business as just a hobby. So anyway, he has run these meetings called Shine meetings for the last 20 years at his house. And I've been to several of them. And every meeting is structured the same way. It's like you could go to him and you could say, hey, here's my challenge in business. I've got, Ascend, and I want to grow this thing. We've kind of hit a plateau. It's working, but I don't know. We just can't get to the level I want to get it to. And so he would invite you to this Shine meeting, and it's in a room with a 30-man conference room table. And he would invite like 30 other people to that meeting, but specific people that he thinks would be helpful to the conversation. And he would cater lunch too. So it's just fun to get together with these other entrepreneurs and business owners and investors and stuff like that. And you're just talking business. Right. But you would specifically get to share for 5 to 10 minutes what you're doing and what your biggest challenge is right now. Like, what's the bottleneck? Then Jim would call on each of those people sitting there one by one. He facilitates it to make sure dominant personalities. There's some people in there that would do all the talking. He makes sure everybody gets to give feedback, and you get to ask questions. They ask questions. They give feedback. And when you have left for the day after that 2-hour mastermind meeting, he calls it a Shine meeting, you have some solid advice, and you've pulled from the collective wisdom of the room to remove the limits on your own experience, your own business, your own thinking. It's a very powerful experience. And so he calls it a Shine meeting because everybody gets to shine with the light of their knowledge and their wisdom on your situation to get you to the next level. And so that's the way we run our masterminds. I don't know what other people are doing, but that's the way ours are structured. And it seems to be working.
Yeah. No, and it's interesting because in my experience, people that haven't done it, like I said, there's usually like a negative connotation with it, but you don't know what you don't know, and they might be operating through personal experience in one or just what they heard from somebody else who may have had a bad experience. And like these things aren't all created equally. That's also important. It's the same way in my world where somebody's like, Google Ads sucks because we did Google Ads and we didn't get any return on it. It's like, well, there's a lot of ways that a Google ad campaign can go sideways and be incredibly unproductive and a waste of money if you're not handling the campaign in an optimal way in order to get a return, to get leads, right? So, yeah, it's just when you mentioned mastermind, that kind of popped in. So I was interested for your perspective. I mean, that sounds like it would be incredibly helpful, having 30 people in a room who have been there or done that or some semblance of doing that to where they can contribute something beneficial to the conversation. Sometimes a lot of the times it's just perspective. It might not even be experience. I think there's a lot of value just in getting a different set of eyes on a situation and having them understand their perspective because I know for me personally, when you're intimately involved in something consistently, I don't want to say you get tunnel vision, but it's less easy to step away from your perspective and the things that have influenced that perspective and look at it objectively, from an outsider perspective. Does that make sense?
Yeah, and I think, like you said, they're not all created equal. We had one mastermind a few months ago, and one of our members just shared, and there's a vulnerability there, right? We're there to learn from one another, and I set the stage with every meeting and saying, hey, this is like going into a jiu-jitsu gym. I want you to imagine a sign over the doorway before you enter the mat, and that sign says, leave your ego at the door. We are here to learn from one another. It doesn't matter whether you think you're a white belt or a black belt. We all have stuff to learn, right? And so we don't allow any like bravado or chest pounding. Nobody, if you're doing $70 million a year in revenue, great. Nobody, who cares? Like you did that because of a team. You didn't yourself do that alone. You know, if you're a true humble, self-aware leader, and I ask you how'd you do that, you're going to start talking about every critical team player. You're not going to talk about yourself. If all you do is talk about yourself, you're delusional, because if all those people leave, your company's going to implode.
Right.
So we had one of our members that just shared openly about, I don't know how to keep my sales guys motivated. And he was open, like, I'm struggling with this. Like, we have turnover in our sales team. We can't seem to keep them motivated. I can sell really well. I hear this kind of stuff constantly. I can sell really well. I don't know why they aren't staying consistent and this and that and the other. So different members, and these are all owners of roofing companies, started chiming in. Well, how do you find out how they're motivated? Are you talking to them? Well, yeah, we have sales meetings every week. Do you ever have one-on-one meetings? No, never do that. And it's just simple stuff. You know, some people run very effective sales meetings and some don't. I think this guy realized toward the end of the mastermind, he's really not running very effective sales meetings because he doesn't know how to motivate his guys. Obviously, you can have goals, and those are really important, quarterly goals and annual goals and whatnot. But some people aren't motivated by money. And so that was his biggest takeaway from the meeting was start meeting with your guys one-on-one and find out what motivates you, what gets you really excited when you go to sell a roof. And some guys are just excited to help a homeowner and feel like they did a good deed for the day, you know. So anyway, there's just, like you said, we all have stuff, we all stand on the shoulders of others, and there's stuff we can learn from one another. So
yeah, that's an interesting point, and I think I've had sales leaders tell me that it's not their job to motivate a salesperson, and I'm like, I don't understand how you think it wouldn't benefit you for somebody who's responsible for driving revenue to feel motivated. Well, they should be motivated. Okay. All right. Well, it is what it is. But yeah, I think that like that's really good insight that your group shared as far as like, okay, you have to understand what motivates somebody, and then you take that a step further. What are you doing, you know, whether it's weekly, monthly, quarterly, to check in with that person as to where we started when we had this conversation and we identified what your wants and needs are and where we are now. Are we pacing to get where you want to be for that 12-month goal, for that 24-month goal? If not, why not? And I think it's important. Me personally, I'm not a sales guru, but I think it's important for, you know, you to check in and then, you know, talk about the things that they're doing well, talking about things that they can improve to better suit the pace or the clip of where they want to be and getting there. It shows people that you care, right? At the end of the day, we want to work for people that we feel like we're making an impact for and we know care about us. Buzzword recently is culture. I left a really good job because, you know, I wanted a different culture. Culture, you know, you can. When I left, it was like, I don't care how much you pay me. It's okay. I want something different. And a lot of companies they fight churn with their employees, and like, how do we keep our employees? It's not always money. I mean, a lot of the times it's going to start with money, but as far as like, especially retaining that talent, you know, if you don't have culture and people don't think that you care, you're a lot more prone to losing that person for an additional 1% or $2 an hour, right?
yeah, I mean, it's just like marriage. I mean, you could have a lot of money in the bank, but if you and your spouse can't seem to agree, or you guys can't go 2 days without having a conflict, man, who cares about the money in the bank? You're miserable, because it's relationship, So I think that, culture, that's a good point. You brought a lot of clarity just by mentioning that one word.
Thank you. It's better to be lucky than good. I got lucky there. So, So coming in from the outside of the roofing industry, what for you has been the best, the most exciting aspect since coming in to now?
I think the thing that I really like about the roofing industry is obviously it's a great business model. And, I'm one of those guys that likes to look at different business models. And I used to sell franchises and go to franchise expos and see all the different businesses for sale and business models and, profit margins and all this stuff. And I just like stuff like that. And so when I got into roofing, I thought, wow, this is just a great industry. I mean, you're helping people. You're doing something that everybody needs, whether it's a business owner or a homeowner. And the margins are really good. And it's a pretty straightforward business model. I mean, obviously the insurance stuff can become cumbersome, but the thing I like the most about it is it feels like a big high school, right? Roofing's it's a big industry, but it's also small enough to where I can go to a conference and I can see you, and I can talk to you, Michael, again. Like we ran into each other at RoofCon. We're going to see each other again at who knows where. I'm going to see, Ryan Groth, Randy Brothers, Hunter Ballou. We're all going to keep running into each other. And it's just really cool. I love that part of it. And it's not, healthcare. I was in healthcare for 2 years, and that industry is just colossal. You never see the same people again. And I really like that relational side of it, that you can actually get to know people and have some fun together and, serve and empower business owners together. And it's just a really neat industry in that regard.
Yeah, I like that. That's a really good answer. Where do you feel, in your experience in the industry, where there's the most opportunity for growth?
I think there's still, for so many roofing companies, there's still a one-trick pony. Like if you're a residential roofing company in Dallas, you do insurance work, and a lot of guys, that's it. They don't want to get into retail. They or maybe they want to try to get into commercial a little bit, but they haven't done it yet, and they've put their toes in the water. Or the solar. There's just so many ways to diversify. And I look at it as a revenue stream. Like if you have let's say you've got a revenue stream as a roofing business owner, and it's insurance work. So you're checking for hail damage, you're asking the homeowner to file a claim. It's that model, right? Well, that's one revenue stream. And that's a wavy line throughout the year. It goes up and down depending on how many sales guys you get, how many hailstorms there are, right? But if you were to add retail to that and have somebody take the lead and just crush it at retail, well, now you've got another revenue stream, and that's going to be a wavy line too. And then you decide, well, we're also going to figure out a way to offer solar if it makes sense, or maybe get into commercial roofing maintenance, develop a commercial roofing division. Then you've got another wavy line that's a revenue stream. But if you've got 3 of those wavy lines, even though they're going up and down, you're creating consistency of revenue in your company. And as long as you've got control over the financial side and your accounts receivable are under control, you've got some real consistent growth there. And I think there's a lot of roofing owners that just haven't done that yet. They've got one wavy line, one revenue stream, and it's retail, or it's insurance work, or it's whatever. But the really big companies out there that are on that top 100 list, they've figured out a way to diversify and to scale operations and sales. So yeah, I think there's a big opportunity there.
Yeah, that's a really interesting point. And you express like the wavy line, right? And it's kind of, if you look at like, peaks and valleys, guess what? If you've got 3 or 4 different revenue streams, those valleys are going to be much lower collectively than that one wavy line with peaks and valleys. So I think that's a really good point. And it's just being open-minded and doing things methodically, being calculated as far as like what your next move is. Because for the guy in Dallas, maybe roof rejuvenation doesn't make as much sense because on average, you got to get a new roof every 3 years. I don't know. I'm pulling these stats out of my ass, so don't quote me on these. But just saying, like, situationally, what's best for you as far as like diversifying might be different than somebody 500 miles north of you or 1,000 miles east of you. But I think that, any investment strategy, you should want to diversify I think that's pretty well received and agreed upon advice. I'm not a financial advisor, so don't hold me to this. But yeah, I like that. I think that there's a lot of opportunity there for sure.
So why do you, I mean, and this is, you're interviewing me, but I'm just thinking out loud here, like, why don't more guys do that? And I think a big part of it is, yes, they don't know the operations side, but going back to our struggle with Limitless this for the first year, and why I think next year is going to be so different, I think a lot of it's the marketing piece. Like, marketing fuels sales. If you can do the marketing thing right, your sales guys are going to be very busy. And I think it's connecting with people like you that can say, look, let me take this burden off of you. I'm going to crush it for you in the area of marketing. I'm going to make it to where you have some business in the pipeline, and you're not going to be twiddling your thumbs in December wondering, what are we going to do?
Yeah, that's a great question. And please feel free to inject questions towards me. I'm happy to answer them every step of the way. I think that I don't think that there's one answer to that. I think some folks will become complacent, right? So if they're doing $8 million and they're at 10% net, they're happy with that, the lifestyle they're living, and if they don't have to take any risk to maintain that, and they've got a model that works, that's good enough for them, and that's okay. There's nothing wrong with that. But I think that there's also groups of people that have that same fear that do aspire to want to grow. They do want that 20% growth next year, 30% growth next year, but they're hamstrung by the fear of, will this work out? What will I have to invest in order to make this new revenue stream possible and profitable? And I think anyone who's in a situation where they're making a sizable investment into something that, especially in a space where they haven't been there before, I think there's always that trepidation, and you got to mull it over. But eventually, you got to shoot your fucking shot, right? And it's okay, because at the end of the day, if maybe you add on, the commercial one's tricky for me. And again, I'm not a commercial roofer, but I've worked with them in the past, and there's a lot of risk associated with taking on a $2 million job in commercial if you're not, if you don't have that experience. I would hope that you would have some level of understanding before you took that job on. But, I mean, if something goes sideways on a $2 million project versus a $15,000 project, I would have to assume that there's more stress and risk and vulnerability for your company in that situation. So I think the transition to commercial might be a little bit more tricky. I think I'm going to follow up that with somebody who is more qualified to answer that than me, though, because I'm speculating. It seems rational, but what's rational isn't always right. So that's a really good question.
But it's a good point. I mean, I think you're right, though. It's like, if you don't know how to do something, and there is risk. I mean, we did under Raintite General Contracting, my business partner's company, we did a $2 million commercial job, and yes, it got pretty complicated, but we hired a consultant. We hired a guy that was a master at that stuff, named Clark Brown. It was a water mitigation job, actually, when the freeze hit Dallas, and it involved a lot of moving parts, from moving people out of their apartments to storage to drying things out to all kinds of stuff. But we knew we weren't the experts, but we knew we could sell the job, and we brought him on board, and he brought the knowledge and the templates and the processes and the teams, and it was awesome. I just think that there's a way. Like, if you want to do something, there's somebody you can team up with. Even if you have to give away a lot of the profit on those first few jobs, it's so easy to connect with somebody else and say, hey, let's do this as kind of a joint venture. And obviously, you've got to do some serious vetting to make sure that that's going to go well. I mean, I think we've all been in situations where you teamed up with the wrong person and learned a very important lesson there.
Yep.
But yeah, there's always a way. There's always somebody that knows how to do it, that's willing to team up with you, and so this is your only chance. I mean, as far as I know, we don't have a lot of redos in this life. There's one guy that came back and said, hey, I was dead and I'm back again, but most people that doesn't happen to.
Well played. You think about it, even thinking about, for instance, predominantly restoration contractors that are dealing in insurance. There's not a lot of open-mindedness as far as things that they can do online. And some of them do, some of them don't, but for the most part, the narrative that I've been exposed through in my, 7 years in dealing with roofing contractors is, you know what? we'll just hire more door knockers. We'll go do this. And like door knocking's fantastic. A lot of people make a lot of money. It's far less scalable. And working with insurance companies is, you heard it here first, not first, but I will reiterate, it's not going to get easier for insurance companies that have, billions of dollars in lobbying to get them to pay for claims. It's just not going to get easier. It's going to consistently get more challenging. And I think being present, omnipresent, a lot of people say, like hitting them everywhere is important, online being one of them. But other facets offline as well. It's like, don't put all your eggs in one basket. Figure out what you can do aside from what you're doing now, and then commit to that shit and commit to it long term, right? I'm going to create a 12 to 24 month plan, and this is what we're going to do. The biggest growth is going to occur in those places of extreme discomfort. And that's a fact. Like,
that's good. Yeah.
It's, I don't know. If you're comfortable, I feel like you're probably not pushing yourself hard enough. But I'm not a life coach either, so I'm just giving a bunch of unsolicited advice on shit I'm not qualified to speak on. So welcome back to the Mission Control Podcast, where Mike goes on rants on a fucking soapbox. It's all good, though. Having a lot of fun today. So what is your goal for 2023 from an enrollment perspective? How many people do you want to make a positive impact on in the roofing community by way of your buyers group? Or whatever you're going to decide to market it as, because you're not sure.
The Limitless roofing group. Yeah.
There we go.
Yeah. So our goal is 300 members by the end of 2023, and our goal is 1,000 members by the end of 2024.
Okay. I like that. So you had a plan of 300 like day one. Now you've pivoted to 300 by the end of year two. That's good. That's good. You got.
Yep.
Now, what is the roadmap like for you? And maybe you don't have an answer to this question yet, because I know you just brought on a CMO. What are you going to do differently to have that accelerated growth? This stuff interests me, obviously, because of what.
Yes. So the marketing piece is huge. So he's deploying a lead gen strategy. I mean, it goes way beyond just ads, right? And you know this better than anybody. It's a whole system that involves messaging, funnel, pipeline, follow-up, a lot of stuff happening. And so we're investing in that. We're making a significant investment in that because it takes money to make money, right? And so that's a big piece of it, to get the pipeline full. And then the next piece is to grow a sales team. So we want to have at least 2 full-time account executives this year, and we're going to be interviewing for that. We hired our first guy, and I think he was the right person, but he wasn't in the right seat. So we recently let him go. So that was a learning curve as well. But we're going to be hiring hopefully 2 really good account executives that can be solution-centered and have a consultative approach to selling. And I think the combination of those 2 things, the operations side is easy. Like, it's easy for me to manage a mastermind meeting. We've got one later today. I'm excited. I'm not like, oh man, we've got this thing coming up. I got to make sure everything's ready to go. I'm excited. That's me in my lane. And so it's easy to do that part of the group. But yeah, just turn the fire up really high on the marketing side, and then get the sales under control. And we got some things in the works that I can't really talk about as far as strategically with bigger players to grow the membership as well. And I think that's going to be key.
Relationships. They can be fruitful. Just
see, this is what you're good at. You just took everything I said and boiled it down to one word. See, I need more of that in my life.
Oh, that's great. So this is always interesting to me when you have a young company, because you want somebody who's in sales that's consultative, strategic, can execute a strategy, who's not going to compromise your brand by making wild promises to get the sale. So there's a lot that rolls up into that ideal salesperson. And you look at it and, well, I've got to be competitive. Like, what is my comp plan going to look like? Because if I don't give a certain level of guarantee, it's going to be hard to attract talent. But at the same time, you're probably, if you go with like no guarantee, or if you go towards a draw or a more performance-based off the muscle, like what type of candidates are you going to attract and what's the likelihood that they're going to excel? If you can talk about it, I'm interested on what your thoughts on that. And it doesn't have to be specific to Limitless, but just in general in sales positions, because I find that as like a tug of war that I feel like I'm not the only one that has.
Yeah, no, that's a good question. I was actually talking to Ryan Groth with Sales Transformation Group about this in Orlando at the VIP party after RoofCon. I had nacho cheese all over my fingers and sitting there with the margarita, and I was just like, hey guys, Ryan was talking to Benji, who I had just met that night from what's Breakthrough Academy. And so I said, what do you, we just hired a sales guy. What do you guys think about 90-day goals and compensation? And their response was not what I expected to hear. Their response was like, you do everything you can to help that person win for the first 90 days. And you set your expectations very low and maybe not even consider sales quota, sales goals or whatever. And they're just, we were just throwing ideas out or whatever. But they were basically like, do everything you can to get this person to get some wins early on, keep them motivated. And then as far as compensation goes, everybody has a different answer. What we did was we started with a small base salary. That was about $18K a year, so very low base salary, but you're going to make, several $100s a week, but heavily geared toward every time you close a deal. And you're pure hunter, by the way. Like once they join, you do nothing with them. You're not running a mastermind. You're not checking up. You're not doing any kind of business planning with them to make sure that their HealthCare is under control, their general liability insurance, all the stuff that we try to make sure our members, we don't want to leave any money on the table. We want to put as much money back in their pocket. You don't have to fool with any of that. All you have to do is book a meeting, get on a call, and ask a lot of questions. So to me, if you're somebody who likes solving problems, that should keep you excited, that if you just focus on that. So we had a very high commission structure. Mm-hmm. And then because of our business model, our hope is that most of our members will re-up every year.
Sure.
And so the way we structured it was that our account executive would make money off of them when they signed up, but also the next year too. So almost like an insurance salesperson. You're building a book of business and you're making recurring revenue every year. So by year 2, year 3, I mean, man, you could be in the, you could be making $200 to $300,000 a year.
Right.
But not year 1.
Right. And I think you had mentioned something specifically about like getting wins early. I'm a big football guy, right? And if you have a second string quarterback coming in, you don't dial up the 9 route or the vertical route to have him air out a 60-yard pass right off the muscle. You throw some crossing routes or maybe some flares out of the backfield. Let them get some completions. Build that confidence, right? Until you dial up the big play once they, have that level of confidence that you feel good with. I think that's a good strategy. And I think that works for a lot of salespeople too, the approach that you took, because, yes, $18,000 a year or whatever is not going to be a lavish lifestyle, but if you can provide them an opportunity to meet their basic needs while training them and giving them opportunities, and they could see the upside, you're going to find people with character too, right? I don't think that many of those entitled. I've always been concerned with, if I bring on a salesperson, what if they're one of those entitled prima donnas that everyone talks about that just kills the culture and they want everything handed to them and they're not going to grind. I think somebody that is going to sign on and subscribe to a comp plan like that is more likely to be within the wheelhouse of somebody who's going to assimilate into the culture that you want. Right?
Yeah, and the 18K was the base. So our on-target earning for our first account executive position we hired, the on-target earnings with base plus commission was $90K the first year.
Right. But if I'm looking at it as a salesperson considering a position, I'm looking at worst case scenario, month 1 and 2, where am I at? And then what is the opportunity? So the on-target number is obviously very important as well. Yeah, dude, I like the way that you handled that. I mean, for what it's worth. Again, I'm not a sales consultant, so.
Well, but what I learned was that, so I'm becoming a really big Dan Sullivan fan. Have you ever heard of this guy?
Yeah.
Dan Sullivan? I had never heard of him until like a month ago, and he's just like one of the foremost business coaches. He's 75 years old, I think, and he's been doing it for like 40 years. And anyway, one of the things he talks about in Who Not How is you don't want the owner, like a charismatic owner or a really good sales type owner, to interview people. Because what happens is, and I did this, you sell people on the position in the company instead of interviewing them. Like they see how excited you are, they see the dream, and they're like, yeah, I can do this. and meanwhile, you're not like, he said, so Dan Sullivan said, I don't interview anybody because I'm a sales guy. And he said, so I get the people in my office that do interviews, they're poker faced. Like they just ask questions. And one of the questions they ask that cuts out most of their interviewees is, if you were to join this company, what do you feel like you would be entitled to? And he said, if they say anything, they're immediately not qualified, because then you know you're dealing with an entitlement issue. Instead, they should respond with something along the lines of, I don't know that I'm entitled, but I want to be a valuable asset to this company. And I want to do these things to make it better, to grow together. I want to do it to maximize this role. So I thought that was really interesting. So I'm not doing the next interview. I'm going to have Miller do it, and I'll do the firing. For some reason, that kind of stuff's easy for me. But he's going to do the interview because I'm just not good at it. I sell the position to the person.
Sure. That's really interesting, and I would love to maybe ask Dan Sullivan, what if they say the only thing I feel entitled to is, whatever salary we agree upon for a job well done? Technically, by virtue of his vetting process, they'd be out the door, but maybe not. Maybe that's like the exception to the rule, because I feel like that would be, that's a fair answer. I don't think that necessarily raises a flag of an entitlement issue.
I think he says so. Yeah, he says most people, if they are feeling really entitled, they have a list. They can talk. They can talk at length about it. Whereas, it's kind of two camps. Whereas the right people will say, they're uncomfortable with the question. They don't see it that way.
I'm about to slide in Mr. Sullivan's DMs. Dan, if you're willing, I'd love to have you on the show and talk more about this. Huh. I like that. I'm going to ask that in my next interview. What do you feel entitled to? But I can't have the interview. I got to have Charlie do the interview now. Fuck.
There you go.
Yeah, you just stood my world on its head. Thanks a lot, Dylan.
You're welcome. The end.
So you're a fan of Traction. You've gotten some exposure to Mr. Sullivan, which you've taken kindly to. What other books or outside influences have you grown near and dear to you? Not even since it being in roofing, just in general, that you found helpful.
So I got a degree in organizational leadership, and it was really cool because the last year of my undergrad, every paper we wrote, every book we read, every assignment was leadership. And then the final assignment was a 25-page paper breaking down your leadership model. And we had to read a lot of great books. And, books on character, books on vision, books on skills, books on, everything from 7 Habits to Highly Effective People to books by John Maxwell, just all the popular books, and then some that you've never heard of. But the most impactful book for me in my life is a really small book called The Greatest Thing in the World. And it's a book by a guy named Henry Drummond. And he wrote the book, and the book is just a short little treatise on love. Like, what does love look like? What does it mean to love people? And in the foreword to the book, there's an old evangelist named D.L. Moody, who I like a lot because he was in England and had no formal education at all, but he was just really sharp with words and really entertaining to listen to. And in the foreword of the book, he said, I never met anyone more Christ-like than Henry Drummond. And what he meant by that was not like some guy that's better than everybody or holier or whatever, but just that being around him, you felt loved. And I knew when I read that book that no one would say that about me. I read the book back when I was like 25 years old, and I'm 42 now. But it hit me so hard. And it's just a short book. You can read the whole book in 20 minutes. And all the book is about is love. And what does love mean? And what does it mean to love people? And to me, if I had to pick one book, like I've got a bookshelf at home I've got a library at home that's got a ton of leadership books on it. But if I had to pick just one, it would be that one.
Greatest Thing in the World. Is that right?
Yep, The Greatest Thing in the World by Henry Drummond.
Click the affiliate link below. No, I'm just fucking with you.
Yeah, I don't have one. But I mean, I've got some really good books on my shelf, and Traction is probably one of the most boring books I've ever read. But it's just systematic. It's like how to run effective meetings, how to hire people, how to scale your company, how to do 90-day goals, how to write a 2-page business plan. It's just a how-to book, which is awesome if you want to like Chick-fil-A your company.
Yeah, I found there were a few takeaways, and I've got to go read it. Well, listen to it again. But there were a couple things like the 90-day goals I thought was brilliant, right? And how to stay focused in a meeting to say, okay, this hour meeting, this is an hour, and this is what we're going to talk about, and really being like hyper conscious as far as not varying from that. I tend to digress. Weird, right? Like, we start talking about this, it intertwines with this. Now we're, next thing you know, we're 7 spreadsheets away and 2 hours in. Yeah, I was like, that's a very interesting point, and I've got to do a better job as a leader. Yeah,
they have a great template for that for their 90-day. They call it the meeting pulse, 90-minute meeting. They've even got a template in the book you can use. It's how you open the meeting, how many minutes you spend. And then you spend the bulk of your meeting identifying, discussing, and solving issues, and Gino Wickman's words, putting them behind you forever.
Yeah, it was boring, but it was good. There was a lot of good information that came out of that book for me. So, what about before all of this? Like, what's an uncommon? What's something that's not well known about you that you can share with the audience?
Not well known about me, I would say I grew up in a single family home raised by a single mom and struggled tremendously in school and was actually put in special ed classes with kids with Down syndrome and stuff like that. The teachers just couldn't figure out what was wrong with me. I couldn't stay on track. Had a very active imagination. So when the first or second grade teacher is saying turn to page 3 in your math book, I'm looking out the window imagining what would it look like if a dinosaur came, crashing through here and started eating the other kids. I couldn't help it, right? Just very imaginative, right? Well, the public education system is designed to crush creativity and teach you how to be kind of good at a lot of stuff. It's not designed to get you to tap into what you're really naturally really good at and to cause that to flourish. So, man, all through elementary and junior high, the teacher would give an assignment, and then I would go to a special classroom with 3 or 4 other kids. And some of them, are like using the restroom on themselves, and some of them were had Down syndrome or other problems. And you start to develop the mindset that, I'm not playing with a full deck here. I'm like one of the stupid people. So I didn't even apply to college or anything like that. And I was a total, I don't know what you were doing in high school. All I was doing was partying a lot, hanging out with my buddies. I was a shithead. I was just getting into a bunch of trouble, right? So I had no aspirations of anything, other than like playing Halo 40 hours a week. And so I didn't even apply to college. I thought that'd be a total waste of time. What am I going to make on the SATs? A 400? I'm an idiot. So when I graduated high school, I went to see a psychiatrist, and I was just like, look, if I'm not playing with a full deck of cards, I don't really care. I just kind of want to know. That'll explain some stuff. So he took me through all this testing, IQ tests, all this kind of stuff. And I met with him for like a couple of months, every other week or so. And he's like, look, man, you don't have a low IQ. He's like, I don't know what your IQ is because you didn't finish any portion of the IQ tests. And he said, you've got a really big problem, but it's not your intellect. He said, it's what we call negative self-talk. And he said, as soon as you experience just a little bit of difficulty, you give up and you say, I can't do this. I can't figure it out. And he said, most kids figure out how to get past that early on because their parents kind of coach them through it, whether it's sports or whatever. They learn to just keep trying. He said, you don't. He said, at some point a long time ago, you didn't try anymore, and you decided, I can't figure this out. And he said, so that's a big problem. And he said, your other huge problem is you just don't care. He's like, I don't know what's going to happen when you find something you actually care about. Right. And so I thought, wow, that's kind of cool. Like I'm not an idiot, you know, I can actually apply myself probably and do something cool. And then, man, God broke through my life. I was a very passionate skeptic. I was really anti-Christian, to put it lightly. If I met a Christian, I would just go after them with 1,000 questions, and was a real philosophical guy. Well, I have another podcast called Elevate with Dylan Mccabe where I share that story of how God kind of broke through into my life. And so then after that, I became very passionate about my relationship with God, but with a little bit of a rougher background. Like I didn't want to be around Christians. I didn't want to be around church people, because I like those are a bunch of like good people who've done all the right things in life. I had a really warped concept of what Christians were too, but I didn't want to be around them. So I finally started going to a church and got around some cool people, and they weren't stuffy, ignorant people who had their head in the sand all the time. They were actually pretty cool people. But I got invited by the guy that ran this big prison ministry. And I was doing security at this church that I was a member of. And he asked me, he just walked up to me. He's a real character, this guy from Louisiana, real heavy accent. And he comes walking up and he said, "Hey, son, what's your name?" I said, "My name's Dylan." This is like a white guy in his early 60s. He said, "I'm Zeke. Nice to meet you, man." I said, "Hey, nice to meet you, Zeke." He said, "You have any dirt on you? You ever been in trouble? You ever been arrested?" And I was like, "Well, I never got caught, but yeah, I've got some dirt on me. I've been in trouble." He's like, "I want you in the prison, son." Okay, all right. So I go to the prison with him. I go to one of the biggest maximum security prisons in Texas. And we roll up to this prison, and I have this crazy experience, which is another 10, 15-minute story. But man, I got into prison ministry, and for 8 years, I started going to prisons, the biggest maximum security prisons in Texas, every single week. And instead of going to the typical church services, I would go to the side of the prison where they're not allowed to get out of their cells. The administrative segregation, the guys that are in super seg, that one guy per cell, they don't get visitors, they get out maybe an hour a day. So I just started going cell to cell talking to those guys, and I did that for 8 years, and it was just a walk on the wild side. Most people don't know that, but yeah, I've spent hours and hours and hours with murderers, confirmed gang members, Mexican mafia members, Aryan Brotherhood members. I've talked to some of the most famous Aryan Brotherhood members in the nation for hours, and it's just it's quite an experience.
Yeah, that's amazing, and I'm sure you imparted some wisdom and perspective on them. What did you learn from doing that?
Yeah, and so it sounds like two kind of separate stories, but the thing I learned after meeting with that psychiatrist when he said, I don't know what's going to happen when you find something you're passionate about, is when I found my relationship with God. I started going to Bible college and started preaching and teaching, started doing prison ministry and all this stuff. I found something I loved and just thrived at it, because I think I think God gave me that gift, but I found something that I really got into big time and became an avid reader of leadership books and all this stuff, and then the prison ministry thing was just an awesome platform and experience. The thing I learned, the biggest thing I learned there with the prison ministry is those guys. I mean, they're just like us. They call this the free world. Like, man, what you doing out there in the free world? That the biggest thing I learned from those guys is that whatever you believe about yourself, that's really going to determine whether you're free or not. Like some of those guys who get locked up and, oh man, that's just who I am. Yeah, I joined the AB, I joined the Aryan Brotherhood, been with them. These are my brothers. I've been with them 8 years, and I'm just never going to leave. It's just who I am now. Okay, well, you just set your fate. The justice system doesn't like it when you viciously attack people or murder people or run drugs. So if you've decided that that's who you are, you've sealed your fate. And I ran into guys that that's it. Like they just believe I'm a convict. That's just who I am. But I also ran into guys that they're in the exact same situation, and they did some soul searching and decided this is not who I am. I'm going to be a father. I'm going to be a whatever. I'm going to be a person of integrity. I'm going to let this be a catalyst for change. And they did, and they would get out and they led good lives. And I think that's true of all of us too. Like whatever you believe about yourself, whatever I believe about myself today, I drove to work believing things about myself. That really determines the freedom or the lack of freedom I have in this life in a big way.
That's a really good point. That's a really good point, because you talk about like self-fulfilling prophecies and things like that, but if it's not causal, there's a strong correlation between how you feel and what's going to happen, whether it's consciously or subconsciously. I would certainly agree with that. I stamp approval.
Yeah.
On
So
it.
when I went to go to Bible college, I'm going in with the mentality that I'm one of the dumb people, right? And then I got to speak at this fundraiser and kind of share a story about how the book Mere Christianity by C.S. Lewis was pivotal in me dealing with some intellectual barriers that I had about Christianity and stuff like that. And I just shared the story of my experience and some other stuff. Well, after that, this wealthy businessman came up and he said, "Hey, you handled yourself very well up there. I like what you said and the way you presented yourself." He said, "I want to help you. Are you going to school?" And at the time, I was really arrogant and unteachable. And I said, "Well, D.L. Moody didn't go to Bible college, and I think we can say God used him. And Charles Spurgeon never went to seminary, and I think we can agree God used him." And he just said, "You need to watch out for that pride, young man." And I said, "You're right. I struggle with that. Got kind of a chip on my shoulder in that area." This is back when I'm like 23 years old. And he said, "Well, Martin Luther had an education, and I think we can agree God used him." I'm like, "Yeah, that's a good point. He's pretty much the catalyst for the entire Reformation." And so he said, "I want to help you, and I'd like to take you to dinner to talk about it." And so we had dinner with him and his wife, and he offered to pay for my education. Again, coming from a single mom, I didn't have any money for college. And he said, "I will pay for your tuition, your books. I'll even give you some money to eat, lunch and stuff like that." He said, "But on one condition, you have to make a 3.5 GPA or above, or I'm no longer obligated to pay for anything." He said, "If you go one semester and get below a 3.5 GPA, that's a warning." He said, "If you have 2 semesters in a row, it's done." Now, this is from somebody who made nothing but F's and D's and C's all my life. And so that was a huge awakening for me, because I was forced to make A's. I was forced to study, forced to focus. And it enabled me to develop a new belief about myself, that you can actually do this. Like you can do really well at something that's meaningful, that's hard. You can do hard things. And I didn't believe that before meeting that guy. So that pressure was really good.
What was your overall GPA?
I graduated with a 3.98. So I didn't get the 4.0.
Look, see, and but that's amazing, right? So you met this guy kind of fortuitously. He's willing to, based on what he's seen, invest in you. You were willing to move on from the predisposition that, or skepticism that you may not be able to do it, and you shot your shot. And look at you, 3.98. Fuck, dude, that's amazing. Congratulations.
Yeah, it was hard, though. It was really hard. And when I moved to Dallas to go to Dallas Theological Seminary to get a master's in theology, we started having to write these critical papers on everything from the original Greek text. I had to take 3 semesters of Greek, which, again, is like, okay, now I do feel stupid. It's just like Greek is so freaking hard. It's not even a spoken language. Like biblical Greek isn't even a spoken language anymore. So try learning a language you can't even speak. It's all through text. It's just ridiculous. But we started having to write papers and stuff at the master's level, and then I realized how hard my undergrad was, because the papers I had to write at Dallas Seminary were easy compared to the papers I had to write in undergrad. So it wasn't easy to get that. And again, I'm not patting myself on the back at all. Trust me. It took a ton of prayer, and it took a ton. I basically spent all my time reading and doing homework. I mean, I met other people who made it look easy, and I was not one of those guys.
I mean, do the shit you don't want to do, and you'll probably end up in the place you want to be, right? Or in a much better place than when you started.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I don't know many people. I know a ton of people that went to university and college, and I've been there, and I don't know many people that were excited about, reading stats for 3 hours on a Tuesday night and trying to remember equations or, whatever your area of discipline is. There's certainly challenges where you're like, what the fuck? There's a very small chance this is going to make a lasting impact in any meaningful way in my life, but I got to do it because this is the class and this is what needs to be done. It's hard to buckle down in those moments. Yeah, so kudos to you. You deserve a pat on the back. Fucking pat yourself. Give yourself an attaboy. That shit's not easy, dude, especially at the master's level. Yeah. Imagine trying to learn a language that's not even fucking spoken.
Oh,
funny.
dude, it's so hard. Oh, God. And then you've got other students in the class that, like, on page 3, you mentioned that's the that verb is in the imperfect tense. And I'm just curious because I thought it was the perfect present because of this ending of the word. And I'm just like, oh my gosh, what are you talking about? Like, I'm doing the best I can to just understand what the teacher's saying. And now you're asking questions. You got me even more confused. I mean, there's people that are just so great at that stuff.
Right.
And that's why they're scholars, and I'm thankful for them. But yeah, not me. I took 3 semesters of Greek, and I was like, that's it. I'm changing degree programs.
Yeah, I've had enough. That's funny. So what is love?
I think love is seeking the greatest good for someone. It's a feeling, but it's also an action. Right? Like, I believe, because of my beliefs, I believe God loves me. Like, I believe God feels intense love for me. But I believe that he also seeks my greatest good. And sometimes that means not giving me what I want, or doing things that are hard in my life, or seeking the greatest good, right? Like, I hear people say all the time, you just do you. Man, that's some of the worst advice you can give somebody. Some people out there going, I'm just going to do me, are completely destroying their lives. I mean, their life is just an utter mess, right? There's a lot of situations where you shouldn't do you. And it takes love to say that. Like, I've had people in my life, and thank God, they don't think everything I do is golden. And they've been like, bro, I got to tell you, like, early on in my Christian walk, I became infatuated with head knowledge, and had a very low level of maturity. So I became very arrogant and unteachable. And I'm so thankful. I had some close friends that were like, hey, bro, I got to tell you, man, you're a little bit difficult to be around. Like, you're pretty intense. Like, I think you need to dial it back a little bit. And I'm thankful. That was love. That was love. They sought my greatest good, and they wanted to do what was good. Or with my kids. I've got 3 daughters, 7, 5, and 2. Me loving them doesn't mean that I just say yes to everything or I'm fun all the time. Although I do try to be fun. I love cracking up with my girls and having fun and being silly, right? And I have great feelings of love toward them. But when they ask me for something that's not good for them, I say no. Like, I know you want to have ice cream for lunch, but we're not going to have ice cream for lunch. Like, you need some vegetables. You need some protein. You need some, maybe we'll have a little ice cream after dinner, and Daddy, please. And they could say, well, you don't care about me. You're not giving me what I want. But if I really love them, I'm not going to give them what they want sometimes. So yeah, that's a super long-winded answer. I'm going to leave it to you to summarize that down into one word. But yeah, I think it's seeking the greatest good for someone, and being willing to lay your life down for that. There's a verse in the Bible that says, Jesus said, greater love has no one than this, that one would lay down his life for his friends. And so having a love that's so strong and so powerful that it's even sacrificial, that's powerful to me.
I like that answer. I don't think there's any need for me to summarize that. I think you did a very good job of articulating that. What do you see a difference between love and unconditional love?
Yeah, I mean, I think I would aspire to unconditional love, but I don't have it. According to the Bible, God has it, and I'm thankful for that, because that means I can really screw up, or I can have a conflict with my wife, and or I can, be too hard on my girls or whatever, and he still loves me. And therefore, I don't live with this umbrella of shame. Unconditional love means, look, you screwed up and you may suffer some consequences just naturally for this, but I love you anyway, and I'm not going anywhere. I'm always here for you, So I aspire to that, but hey, we're all human, right? We're all a work in progress.
Yeah, it's interesting. I'm jacking these two questions from a podcast I was recently on because I liked what it did to me mentally to think through these things. And as I was parsing through it in my mind, I was like, yeah, well, I love my daughter unconditionally. But it's almost like there's a paradox there because what you feel is unconditional love and how they're receiving or how they perceive your love for them, I think are different. And especially in a relationship like a parent with a child, when your job is to steer them down a path to set them up for success and be a well-adjusted adult, I would think we would agree those are some of the traits of being a parent. A lot of the times, I guess the tenets of what feels like unconditional love and you executing your duties as a parent kind of feel like they conflict. So I'm always thinking in my mind, like, does my daughter, I know that she wanted to do this, but I told her no, and like she has to do this. She knows that I love her, right?
Yeah.
It's interesting.
Yeah, and I think so much of our experience, informs us of what love looks like. For me, I get a lot of my examples from other people, men in my life that I really admire, and I see the way that they talk about their kids. I see the way that they talk about their employees. I see the way that they've treated me, and they're great examples. I grew up in a broken home where I saw my dad once a year almost all my whole life. And he would say, I love you. And I know he felt love for me, but for me, that's a distant love. It's you're out there, you're far away, and you love me, but it's from a distance. It's not actively involved in my life. So I'm really passionate about being very involved with my family and being home at dinner every night and not making work the most important thing in my life. It's very important, but it's not more important than my family. And so for me, that's love to me, is me loving my wife well, loving my family well. I still date my wife. She's my best friend. Even though we had an argument last night, we made up this morning, and that's love, right? We talked about it, and it was just great. And there were some I'm sorry's and I forgive you's in there, and that's loving, right? But for me, it means being actively involved. It means being real. It means being humble and being teachable. Because I don't know why I'm quoting D.L. Moody so much. I haven't read a book by D.L. Moody in like 10 years. But D.L. Moody said, one of the things he said was, I've got more trouble with D.L. Moody than I have with anybody else. And that takes love. Yeah, that takes love. It's like, look, I can't get too upset with you because I'm just as jacked up. I mean, you were rude to me, you were short to me, but I was rude and short with you a week ago. So we're both a work in progress here.
I like that. It had to be tough growing up in an environment where you didn't get to see your father, I'm sure, as much as you'd like. What have you found some good that's been pulled out of that?
Yes. So I'm a big fan of a statement that says God redeems what he allows, meaning that it can be used for good, right? So I grew up in a broken home with a lot of instability, poverty, just a lot of challenges there. And just a lot of brokenness interpersonally, a lot of jacked up stuff happened. And I had two older sisters and a younger half-sister that lived with my dad in Connecticut. But the way that's been used for good is I'm so passionate about family. I mean, I'm so passionate about it. I really want to have the best marriage I can have on earth. I want to have the best relationships with my girls. I want to be close to them. I want to teach them great things and inspire them and learn about them and just kind of see how they develop, what they turn into, Yeah. So that's how it's been used for good. I think if that wouldn't have happened, maybe I'd be one of these guys that work is my God and I'm going to work 80 hours a week to make Limitless this, machine of revenue. But I just don't see it that way. I see Limitless as a platform to get to know other people and try to love other people well. But I really am just a big family man, and I don't think that would have happened without that kind of negative experience.
It's a good answer. That's a good answer, and I'm glad that there was a silver lining for you in an otherwise set of unfortunate circumstances that helped shape you into the person that you are today. Because I like this person, if I'm being honest. I don't know you that well, but through our conversations, you seem like a really great dude. So thank you for that.
Oh, thanks, man.
Yeah, no doubt. One more question. So, what's one situation that comes to mind of adversity? How'd you get through it? And how has that impacted the person you are today?
Just to use the most recent example is growing a new venture, and I'm gonna make sure my laptop's plugged in here. I'm so bad about not plugging the power cord in.
I did it when I was on with Hunter Ballou. I'm like, hold on, Hunter, stop talking. I'll be right back. I got to plug in my computer. Oh, my bad.
Yeah, I would say this most recent venture of taking a new concept, taking several months to build it out, negotiating with a big supplier, going through all of that, launching, and then crickets. I mean, it's like we have this amazing thing called Limitless, this buying group, and what is happening? You just have this idea in your mind of how things are going to go. And we've learned so much. I mean, we've gained so much ground in the last 12 months. But I've gone through really a pretty powerful boot camp on endurance. What does it look like to persevere? What does it look like to have grit? I've always admired people like that. Like you watch these YouTube videos of guys like David Goggins and these other guys that just like, suck it up and stay with it and do the hard thing. I've always admired people like that, but I'm like, I'm just not that guy. Like I'm just not one of those guys that can say, be like this and that's what I'm like, But this last year has really been some serious training in that realm. And I'm even reading the book called Grit. And I'm reading another book about the story of Ernest Shackleton and how their ship got stuck in the ice and they had to survive out there in the Arctic for many, many, many months. And the book, the name of his ship is called The Endurance. That was his family crest. And they had a tagline that said, "Through endurance, we conquer." And so I feel like everything that's coming at me this year, whether it's books or conversations with people or YouTube videos, is just, hey, stick with this. Keep marching. Keep going. Keep adding a page to the story every day. Have endurance.
So you're getting grittier by the day. And it's interesting because what you had mentioned earlier on in the podcast was that, the way that we think, the things that we believe, obviously manifest themselves and impact in what happens. So it sounds like you're growing, right? Because you started off as, that's not me, that's not me. And through, perspective being gained by reading these books and these experiences, it sounds like you're moving along that spectrum towards being more and more like that person, right?
That's right. I mean, that is so true that I feel like I'm learning something that a lot of people learn as kids, really, especially kids that play sports for 2-3 years in a row. Like they learn to just stick with getting better at soccer or hitting the ball in baseball and going to the batting cages or whatever. So I think there's some serious training taking place.
Good. I love I love to grow myself, and I love to watch other people grow. So I will be interested to watch that evolution. And then who knows, maybe, down the road we'll circle back and we'll talk about some of the lessons and how things that you've learned and what you found helpful so that we could help the next person. If we could help one person take that information and actualize meaningful change in their life, that's what we're here for, man. So, God, this was so good, dude. I can't thank you enough for coming on and spending some time with us today.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Mike. I appreciate it, man. And I like the style of the way that you ask questions and conversational and stuff like that, because I've hosted several podcasts and your style is almost like a Joe Rogan type style. It's just relaxed and conversational, and I like that.
Well, you're making a boy blush, but I too like his style and try to take a certain tack to make it feel comfortable and informative. And yeah, so any feedback that you have to make it better, shoot me a DM. Don't say it online because I don't want everyone to have my secrets. But yeah, dude, it was amazing. So if somebody is interested in the Limitless buying group and becoming a part of that family, what's the best way for them to do that?
You can connect with me on Facebook. You can Google Limitless Buying Group in Google. Our website right now is roofinggpo.com. And GPO stands for Group Purchasing Organization, but we're about to change it to limitlessroofinggroup.com. So whatever, I would just Google it, Limitless Roofing Group, and we have a Facebook group as well.
Got it. So make sure you go check Dylan and Limitless out. By the way, one of my guys sent me a shirt. If you want to potentially have Mike Stearns sporting your gear on the Mission Control podcast, send your boy a shirt, and maybe I'll throw it on for a piece of production. I don't know. Maybe I will, maybe I won't, but I probably will. So slide in my DMs, get the address, and I'll rock some of your gear on the show. Dylan, thanks again, brother. Thank you to the audience for tuning in, and we gone.
Bye.